hear us now? Can you hear us now? Give us a wave if you can hear us. Yes, wow. Look at that.
Now, who was in charge of the controls there?
That's me.
Oh,
oops. Look, do you know what happened there, folks? Is I started the webinar and I forgot to unmute the mic. We're not in the studio this week, so we're out on site, and well, not on site, not on a building site, but we're on an outside broadcast, and it makes it more complicated. But you can hear us now, which is good. Which is good. Do you want to know where? Should we tell people where we are?
You can if you want.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Not a secret.
No, it's not a secret. We're actually in a meeting room. There we are. We're in a meeting room. We're at a hotel in Birmingham, and we've got an exhibition, or the company's got an exhibition up here at the Home Building and Renovation Show at the NEC. If you've not been before, definitely worth a visit.
It's good. It's very big. There's lots of it, but we're doing our bit, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, we're there. I mean, what's not to like about that? Come and see us. Come and have a hug if you've, well, obviously that COVID restrict. I don't know, do we have to restrict? We can hug. I think we can hug.
It out, yeah.
But there's loads of stuff. Do you know, to be fair, if you are, developing, you're into development, loads of innovation, lots of things. I haven't had a chance to walk around the hall yet, but I'm probably going to do that tomorrow or Saturday. It's on for 4 days, so definitely come along. Come up to NEC, come and say hello to us, have a bit of a hug if you want, and have a look around. Lots going on up here, so that could be useful. Anyway, look. It's good to have you here, as we're both here. We're not in separate studios, so we're going to have to get on tonight, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
Good stuff. Look, as always, over the next 45 minutes, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of property development. Well, I mean, that's what we're doing, isn't it, Ian? Is that more or less what the,
it is?
What
we're going to be covering some of the latest news items, obviously, and we're talking, as ever, on Open Door to some of the movers and shakers in the world of property development, and shining a bit of a spotlight on some things that might be of interest to you and to new developers. Sort of things that might be a good opportunity for you to take a look at.
No movers and shakers here tonight. Now, I looked around the meeting room, there's not one single mover and shaker. Hey. There's about 12 chairs around this big boardroom table, but there's no one else here other than us, I can tell you that. Look, above all, and the important thing about the Open Door Show is that we've got to have a bit of fun doing it, because life is far too short not to have a bit of fun. I think that's important. So please, we're going to have a subject tonight, but we need questions. Put your questions in the chat box, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can before the show. And of course, Ian, what is coming up in tonight's show?
Well, property development is famous for reaping the rewards at the end after you've finished your development project. And of course, that can be takes a few months to get there, even years. So there is a way in which you can get profits. You can take some income as you go along, and Richie is going to be telling us all about that.
I'll have a go. I'll definitely have a go.
Good luck.
Let's see who's on and who can now hear us. There's lots of comments in the chat box. No sound, no sound. Can hear you now. Can hear you now. I think that's good, isn't it? Okay.
Well, I think it's your fault.
Who's on? Damien's on. Hello, Damien. Good to see you. Ella's on. Hello, Ella. Haven't seen you on here for a long time. Roma and Richard's on. Jack's on. Emily's on. Sophie's on. Malesh is on. Do you know, there's quite a few. Daryl's on as well. Joe's on. Hello, Joe, as well. Let's have a look. Ollie's on. Lou's on. Sarah's on. Nadia's on. Gary's on. Josh is on. Hodginder's on. Shall I read them all out?
Well, you've done a pretty good job. The gang's all here.
Yeah, I haven't read them all out. I could read them all out, but I'm not going to do that this evening. So we've got some news in. What's the news items?
Well, a few news items I've got for you here. There's been lots in the news about house prices because nobody knows what the direction of travel is. I've heard some stuff. There was somebody saying there's going to be a 50% correction in house prices in London, which seems quite draconian. But interestingly, today the government came out, or rather yesterday, came out with an upgraded house price forecast for this year. They think that house prices are going to jump on average 20 grand this year. The housing boom lasts another 12 months. So they reckon house price forecasts growth 7.4%. So it's about, I think it was 10.8% last year. So they reckon it's going to tail off a bit. But interestingly, they're not forecasting a correction or any massive dip. They seem to think that there's still this underlying huge kind of bubble of supply that's demand that's going into the market, and not much in the way of supply, which leads me on rather nicely to my second one, which is some quite extraordinary bun fights that are going on in London for rental property. So we had a whole load of landlords exit the market last year, taking advantage, I think, of the a very vibrant market to be able to sell their properties. And now guess what? There's not enough properties for rent. There's an agent here who says that it was normally pre-COVID 700 to 800 available properties to rent. They've currently got 300, and they're looking at some people paying 20% over the odds and tying up and paying rent in advance for 2 years just to be able to secure the property. So quite interesting as landlords exit the market, so increases demand. And that's happening in central London. I suspect it might be happening in an area near you too. And then my third one.
Even more.
There is more, yeah.
Oh.
This is quite an interesting one. So
is this the funny story now?
Well, I found it, it's sort of funny and not funny. That can.
Are you sort of hedging your bets? It's not funny.
Well, it's about health and safety, which is a very serious issue. So the HSE are the body that's responsible for inspecting building sites and making sure everything's sort of hunky-dory. And they had a good look round a building site in Manchester, and they weren't particularly impressed with what they saw. Did an inspection and found that the contractor didn't have a plan, no risk assessments detailing kind of how the work could be safely carried out, didn't have a site manager who had any skill or knowledge or experience, didn't manage or oversee the work, hadn't heard of health and safety, had a large, deep, unprotected excavation which gave rise to a foreseeable fall risk, and the excavations were not shored or suitably battered back to prevent the risk of collapse. No personal protective equipment provided to workers, and some workers were working barefoot.
Was it in the summer?
The site was not adequately secured to prevent unauthorized persons from entering, and a neighbouring property had been undermined. But apart from that, apparently, clean bill of health. So just goes to show, health and safety should be at the forefront of your endeavours if you are a developer. But apparently, that was one in Manchester that failed.
Barefoot working on a building site. Crazy. Okay, and just a couple of comments on here. Philip says, hi chaps, till Sunday, question mark. Yes, you're asking the show. The show is open till Sunday, 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there's a lot there. So I haven't looked around it, but there's lots of stuff there. So definitely worth a look. Faisal says, is it available recorded to view later? If you're talking about the home building show, no. If you're talking about the open doors show, yes, it will be recorded. It is being recorded actually, so we will not swear. And it will actually then be put up on YouTube. You can find it. So if you pop onto YouTube, type in Property CEO on Monday, and you'll be able to watch us again. Unless you've got something better to do. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a talk here now, aren't I?
Want me to leave?
No, you can stay. You can stay. So we're talking about getting paid to develop property, which sounds great, doesn't it? Actually, someone's going to pay you to develop property, because this challenge and this problem that a lot of people have is they look at property development and they go, it's the big lump of cash I'm going to get at the end, okay? Which is fine, but of course there's some people that need a little bit of cash on the way through. You know, they want to make sure actually they can keep themselves going. Maybe they need a little bit of bit of financial input into the household to make things going. That's why a lot of people go and choose the sort of buy-to-lets and start going on those as a building of their property journey. So how can you actually get someone to pay you development? Well, as I say, normally you'd expect to be paid at the end. But that is a long time to wait, and it's a long time to wait for a bit of cash. So how about if I told you right now tonight, and some of you will know this, some of our students will know this because you're out there, you're doing it. Some of our students, if you don't know this, you should do, because we tell you about this, and there will be questions next time we meet. And of course, those that aren't students might not know this at all. But what about if you could actually earn, say, £5,000 per month whilst the project's on site? I mean, how good would that be? Well, I tell you what, how about you don't earn it? How about you make it? Because you're not going to have to do a huge amount of work to actually do this. How can we do this? Well, some funders, not all, okay, not all, that's important you know that, will allow you to do this. They'll allow you to draw effectively advanced profits throughout the time whilst the project's on site. So it's whilst your project's on site, and some funders will let you do that, and it comes out of profits. It's got to come from somewhere, because if you don't take it, it will go straight to the bottom line. Give you an example. Grab a pen, write this down if you really want to. If there's a pen, yeah, but that pen's no good for them, is it?
You said it.
No, just what's the matter with the guy? Anyway, look, grab yourself a pen. Hopefully you've got one by now. Let's assume you've got a construction project, and let's say the cost is around, say, £300,000. Let's make it nice and simple. The management fee could be between 5 and 10%, which is £15,000 to £30,000. That's how much some funders will let you draw in advance of the project being all signed off and sold out at the back end, over the period of it being on site. So let's just assume it was on site for 6 months. How much would that be? Maths tonight. They didn't know they had maths, did they? I should have said grab a calculator. That would be between £2,500 and £5,000 a month. So as I say, who would like £5,000 a month? So 2,500, 5,000. Most people can probably live on 3,000 a year. 3,000 a year, not 3,000 a year. 3,000 a month probably pays a lot of people's bills in this country. 5, yeah, probably most of you could survive on 5. You could draw that over 6 months. I'm not talking about project management, okay? This is not the fee to manage the project on a daily basis. And that's why I talk about not earning it, but actually making it, okay? This is a development management. This is the overall role of running the project from the top. That's what you're doing. You're effectively running the project manager, who he or she is then running the contractor and all the subcontractors, obviously underneath the main contractor, and then of course running all the individual professionals if you would like them to do that. So it is, as I say, it is advanced profit. So if you don't take it, it goes straight to the bottom line. And just be clear, not all funders will allow this. So you need to talk to your broker. You need to say to your broker, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is what I intend to do. Can you find me a funder that will support that? Sometimes they give it to you complete upfront sum. Sometimes they let you draw it out over that period. Okay. So in terms of that, why do they do it? What's the reason? Why will some let you? Well, those that want you to manage the project and want you to manage their money, I'm talking about the funders. Funders going to lend you £500,000. They want you to look after their £500,000. And those funders understand that you've probably got a job, another business that you've got to run. So they want you to have time. They don't want you to be totally focused over there on your job or your other business. They want you to have time to put in to looking after their money. Okay, so if they're lending you £500,000, 700, whatever, they want you to have a bit of time to look after and manage the project at a high level. So it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense for you to do that. Now, not all funders, and I don't think they're as enlightened if they do that, but I think there is a large proportion of funders that will support new developers out there, not new build, sorry, but new developers, and actually, effectively get them. I mean, it's almost sponsoring them to do that. It's your money. Don't forget, it is your money. It's just coming out of the profit. Now, I guess when you're looking at this, it is the period whilst it's on site. So unless you have a project on site all the time, there will be some months that you can't draw money. So don't think of it as a thing, it's just forever and a day once I start development. But of course, you can have multiple projects. So you could get your first project running. When that goes onto site, you start drawing, start looking for your second project. Excuse me, once that comes into place, maybe that starts on site where the first one's finished, and so on. So you could, with a bit of careful organization, more or less, I'm sure there's going to be some months when you're not, have a project on site all the time, which means you can always draw, and sometimes they'll overlap. So maybe you could be drawing 10 a month. Now, I think the interesting thing for me, when some people want to get into development or into property, they're trying to get this passive income, and they build up these portfolios, and people build up service departments and HMOs, and they think that's passive income, and I can't think of anything less passive. I mean, some people get it right, but there are so many people out there, and you've probably come across them, and I really hope you're not one yourself, where they've got service departments and they say, oh, that's my passive income, and they're on the phone every 5 minutes trying to get check-ins sorted and key boxes. And I was talking to someone once, and we were going somewhere I think to an exhibition, actually. It might have even been up here in Birmingham. And on the way up, they were having to sort someone out and let them in. And then a couple of days later, I speak to them again, and they said, I have to call you back. I'm just cleaning my apartments because the cleaners let me down. And it's like, that's not passive. Even buy-to-lets aren't passive once you get someone starting to trash a property. So this is not passive. You have to do something, but you are in a place where, you know, you've got a project manager doing the heavy lifting, doing the day-to-day controlling. You effectively are just controlling the project manager. It just gives you the ability to take a day off a week, a few days a month, to make sure you've got time to put into it. And I guess for some people, it might be the difference from getting into development or not getting into development. Okay, that's about the bottom line of it. In terms of, you know, how do you get this? How do you do it? You know, some will pay it up front. I had a funder once, and they just wrote, they write a check, obviously, but you know, effectively, they just back transferred me a check, you know, and there it was, you know, 30 grand straight in the bank. Could have bought a car if I'd wanted. I mean, they might have questioned that, but you know, largely they don't mind what you do with it. But it's probably, you've got to get this set up right. So talk to your broker how this would work. You can't just draw it out the company. So you probably got to invoice it from another company. You've probably got to set up a structure. You've got to say what you're going to be doing in broad terms that I'm going to be managing the project. And then maybe your holding company is invoicing the SPV, you know, to get the money out. And it is development management services. So I think if we sort of think, then go back to this sort of summary, this headline point, getting paid to develop property. You're not getting paid as such. You're not earning this money. You're making this money. You have to do a bit of work, but certainly you're not having to do at an hourly rate. You know, you could draw this circa £5,000, 6 months whilst it's on site, and it could just be the difference of you getting somewhere. If you don't, it goes straight to the bottom line. So it's not any extra money, because someone said, where does this come from? Where's this extra money? It's not extra. Okay, when you understand how to calculate this, you'll realize that it is just purely advanced profit. But as I say, it can make the difference. So there we are. That's how you can get paid to develop property. Right. Maybe you didn't know that.
Very good.
So please, look, any questions to do with that? I can see there's quite a few coming already, so we're going to get stuck straight in. But any questions to do with what I've talked about getting paid to develop property, or indeed any other question about anything, look, hopefully to do with property, or the home building renovation show, we'll have a go at answering those this evening as well.
We'll answer anything.
So we got some questions in?
We've got quite a few questions coming in. I've got one here from Karen. Good evening, Karen. What do you have to do to get the fee? Do you have to provide a job description? No, as Richie said, basically you need to tell your broker that you're looking for the development management fee, and then what you'll end up doing is the broker will go and find a commercial lender who is happy to advance your development management fee and agree terms and so on. And then typically you'll have a separate company, so you'll be invoicing your development limited company for your time and effort, and for the fee. So basically, speak to your broker, work out what it is that the commercial lender wants, and then ultimately, as Richie said, some of them are happy to pay all in one go, others want it done on a monthly basis, and you just invoice them or invoice yourself effectively, and then your development company will pay you. There we go, Karen. Hope that helps.
Well, hope it helps.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Josh has got a question. Hello, Josh. Nice to see you on here again. I haven't seen you on here for a few weeks, I don't think, anyway. Josh says, when you mention 5 to 10%, what would that depend upon to get the higher number? It's really the funder, Josh. Okay, it depends. Different funders will take different views. I don't know what criteria they will personally base it on, or whether a 5 to 10%. I just know some are happy with 5. They want to keep you really hungry. That's I guess the theory behind those funders that don't want to do it is they want to keep you totally hungry to the end. But my view, and I think a lot of other funders obviously agree, because they do this advanced profit effectively, is it's not that significant. You know, if you're about to make 300,000 profit and you get 30, you're not going to take the 30 and leave the other 270 on the table. You know, you're going to work for that. You're going to work for that, and of course you've got a personal guarantee anyway. So I think it's not. I think in terms of the higher number, I don't think it would be the project as such. I think it would be the appetite and probably the policy, if there is going to be a policy, but it just might be the underwriters, the directors of those finance companies that decide what they want to do. They're happy to lend 5, they're happy to lend 10. There may be, Josh, and I don't know, I've never asked this specific question, but your broker might be able to help you. They say, actually, look, and this would make sense, if you had a very lucrative project in terms of you were 24, 25% profit on GDV, so a really strong project, they might be prepared to advance you a little bit more. I think the other thing one has to be aware as well, there may be times when they might pull it back and lower it in terms of, or not even take that risk, even if they ordinarily might, if they think this project's, I don't know, it's really close to the wire. So I think the reality is, Josh, it's probably the funders that will decide that in terms of their appetite for the work you've got. Just a statement in that Dan's put in. I think, Dan, thank you for this. This is interesting. Dan says, getting a development management fee was fundamental for us on our first project. So we shopped around and managed to find a funder that was happy for us to pull a 10% development management fee, that was easy to say, wasn't it, from our project, which was circa 5K a month. Okay, excellent. Over the period of the project, thumbs up. Look, there you go. Dan's out there. He's done that, actually 5K a month. And it's a fairly common figure. Thank you for that, Dan. It's a fairly common figure. So there is someone out there doing it, and pulling those sort of monies out. What's next, Ian?
I got one here from Jen. Good evening, Jen. If your commercial funders don't allow this, could you do the same thing with your private investors? Okay, so with private investment, that as long as you're not joint venturing, as long as it's a straightforward loan, then ultimately the loan is for you to develop the property. So what you spend that money on pretty much is down to you. So obviously sometimes you'll be using that money to be able to fund the deposit and so on in terms of the asset you're acquiring. You may also have some ancillary costs that relate to the project that you could include in there. At the end of the day, private investors are less worried about what you spend the money on, because ultimately they've got an arrangement with you whereby it's a straightforward loan. So they're just paying you back the money. You're paying them back their money at the end based on the terms that you've agreed. So they're pretty okay with the fact that you're going to be spending that money on stuff that's related to that development, and of course your development fund management fee would be part of that. But at the end of the day, they're not signing off every single expense that you incur on the project. What they want at the end of the day is to make sure that they get their money back plus interest when it's all finished and you've sold the units. So those aren't prerequisites for your private investors. I hope that helps you.
But was that gin?
Mm-hmm.
Don't buy a car, gin.
No, don't buy a car.
No, because it'll backfire on you. And I'm sure there are some developers that's done that, taken out of private money and bought a car. I don't know of any, but I bet someone has somewhere. But you can imagine that backfires, and then you can't pay the money back because the project's all gone bad. People will have done crazy things like that. But I think the important thing, I think that Ian said there, and I think this is really key, is don't get your private investors involved to the extent of what you're spending the money on. I mean, obviously it's going to be the project, and your loan agreement will probably say what projects it's going into, and it's not going to say it's not going to buy a car, but it's focusing on those bricks and mortar investments. But yeah, your private investors, it's up to you whether you spend that on fees for the consultants, for the managers, including yourself as a manager, or whether you spend it on some materials if you wanted to do that, or whether you put it down as part of the deposit for the purchase, doesn't matter. Okay, so don't get them involved to a stage where they are having a say and wanting to see all the bills and the expenditure. Definitely don't do that. And that's why it comes into group holding company and goes into the SPV. So they're completely removed from the whole thing. There we go. Okay, I've got a question here from Will. Will says, does this money have to be drawn as a salary and taxed as PAYE?
Good question.
No, it shouldn't be. But what I would say, Will, and this is, there's lots of pressure from HMRC on businesses to properly register people who are on a salary. Okay. And lots of companies get caught out with this, where I'm just trying to give a bit of background here, where they employ consultants and they save the PAYE, the national insurance, so the company's saving money, and of course they haven't got all the HR requirements, and they haven't got all the liability, and they've got to pay holiday, like 0-hour contracts. You've heard of these sorts of things, and they just employ their staff as consultants. And of course, the problem there is, if those staff are only working for one client, then the HMRC can actually come back and challenge that and say, no, effectively they're employed. The distinction always used to be, and I think it is still very similar to this, Will, is that you have to, as a consultant, be working for other organizations or be available. So just be careful on this one. I would definitely say you chat this through with your accountant, but in theory, if you take it through your group holding company, Will, and you're invoicing the SPV, I'm rather hoping you're going to do more than one project. So yes, you invoice that SPV, and now you invoice that SPV and the next SPV. Now, from an HMRC investigation point of view, should there ever be one, you as a group holding company and charging out your time as a consultant for whatever rate you want. Okay, you can charge £5,000 an hour if you want. That's up to you. You can see that you've charged it to several companies. What I would say though is, so it's unlikely to have to be a salary and PAYE and national insurance and so on, but we'll check with your accountant, tell them what it is you want to do, the duration of that money, and of course what else you've got going on. It might be that your structure and your setup. We advise all our students, when our students come on board, we very carefully, we have a business coach that advises them on their company setup, particularly if they've got buy-to-lets or HMOs and service departments. And Will, everyone's situation is different, and you don't want to pay more tax than you have to. You've got to get this right, and equally you don't want to get caught out with anything. But I would say chat to your accountant, tell them what you're planning to do, what else you're planning to do, because if your group holding company's there and you've got a buy-to-let portfolio held in another limited company, which is held by the group holding company, you could charge management fees across to there to legitimate ones, you know, to actually get away from this potential falling in under a employed person. So question for your accountant, Will, but in principle, hopefully not. Well done, Ian.
I've got one here from Gary. Good evening, Gary. When you say that you don't have to be the project manager, if you want to do that as well, then I guess you could get more money for that too. Right, bit of a sore point here with one of my colleagues.
Gary.
That is Gary. Yeah.
Gary, no.
So basically, we're after leverage here. So the idea behind well, the name in our company, propertyCEO, is to be the CEO. And unless you are really, really passionate about project management, and speaking to most project managers, I would say that they do it to earn a living rather than because they absolutely love managing projects. And so managing your own project might save somewhere between 5, 10, maybe 15,000, which is kind of great, but you are earning it because managing a project, and I have to say, if you've never managed a development project before, then you're in for a bit of a baptism of fire. Far easier to get a project manager who has got the t-shirt on it, who understands how to do it, has been in the industry for a long time, and is wise to all of the little tricks that go on in the industry and keeps everybody honest and on their game. They then just report into you. That is, to my mind, actually the best value of all the fees that you pay. Paying your project manager is probably the best value that you get, and it enables you to play that role as a CEO. And you'll just have a weekly call with your project manager, and it will be their responsibility to make sure that everything that should happen on site happens on site. You'll still need to make decisions. You'll still be asked about some of the things that are happening on site, but ultimately you're doing it as a CEO, not doing it as a hands-on project manager. Because frankly, I can't think of anything worse. Project managers earn their money, and you're far better giving it to them to do. So, a bit of leverage. Don't. You won't get the stress. Let them take the strain, and you can just have a weekly call with them. Gary, I hope that helps.
Good stuff. There you go, Gary. No. 2 questions here from Emily. Emily, I don't understand the second one, but I'm going to do the first one first of all. Can a car park allow permission rights to develop? I'm assuming you're asking there, are there any permitted development rights for car parks? I think that's what you're asking, Emily, and no, there isn't. Okay, so if you buy a car park and you want to develop it, build something new, you have to go for planning permission. I'm assuming that's what you're asking. Just put in the chat box if anything different. And Emily, your second question, do you suggest not to choose a dangerous city to invest in? What do you mean by dangerous city, Emily? Perhaps just clarify that for me so I can answer that question in the chat box. What do you mean by a dangerous city? I'm assuming we're not talking, one rather hopes not, we're not talking somewhere in Ukraine or something like that for obvious reasons. But what do you mean by a dangerous city? Let me have a bit more clarification on that, and I'll try and answer that for you this evening. Let's just pick up another one and see if that comes in from Robert. Because Robert says on your show a few weeks back, blimey, I can't remember a few weeks back. What did we do a few weeks back? Can you remember?
God.
Robert, we're going to do our best to see if we can remember. On your show a few weeks back, says Robert, you talked about new businesses starting up, I remember, and that this would help new developers. I didn't quite get that. How will that help new developers, says Robert. I guess Robert's listened to it on YouTube. By the way, folks, as I said, pop onto YouTube propertyCEO. You can listen to all back issues. And like Robert, you can come back and ask a question of clarification. So Robert, in terms of new businesses starting up, I think we were talking all around, where the opportunities are going to be in 2022. So this is probably, it could have been a January show even, so January, February, whatever, it doesn't matter. So what we were talking about is where the opportunities might be. And of course, over the last few years, Robert, many businesses have closed down. Many businesses have scaled down. They're changing their premises, shops, retail, wherever. All of these offices, of course, they're all changing their requirements. And of course, some have shut down. So, I don't think there's a town or city in this country where restaurants haven't shut down, where banks haven't closed their doors, where offices haven't closed. All sorts of businesses sadly have failed. And I think this point about new businesses, when an old business fails, a new one starts up, okay? It always does. And I think you get, when you get a whole round of redundancies, and, sadly over the last few years, Robert, we've had a whole stack of that. There's talent. There's a whole load of talent that goes into the marketplace. And what does that talent do? Well, some of that talent goes and finds another job. Some talent goes, that's it, I'm going to take an early retirement. Some talent probably struggle, to be fair. And some of that talent goes, I don't think I want to work for anyone else again. I want to do my own business. I've now been pushed. Now's the time. And the majority of entrepreneurs in business start their own business when they've been pushed out of a company. So it's been forced upon them. So out of the sort of tragedy of businesses closing down, you end up with all of these people, and a big proportion of those are entrepreneurial. And what do? They then start up new businesses. And what do those businesses want? They want premises. And of course, what comes out of major changes in the world, the COVID has forced major changes upon us. The high street, it's been decimated. It's massively accelerated what was already going to happen. And some of the entrepreneurs in the retail space have really gone in and snatched the marketplace by getting stuff online, providing different services. I mean, let's just pick actually one in the restaurant food chain. I mean, what is it? Deliveroo, Uber Eats, those organisations, and there's more of them. They're massive. They're huge, and they were nothing before. So there's a business. So what does that business need? It needs premises. They probably have lots of warehouses, probably lots of dark kitchens that they work out of. They don't all go, to restaurants to pick up the food. A lot of these are cooked, especially in dark kitchens. They will have, headquarters, to say, other places. So lots of businesses start up. Startups need new properties by developers. So Robert, that's what we're talking about. Really, for developers, there's always opportunity. Market disruption gives opportunity. That's the key thing. Robert, hopefully that gives a bit of clarification. Not sure which show it was, but if anyone wants to go back and listen to that, go and listen to our first show in January, because we talked about the opportunities of 2022. Go for it.
We've got one here from Rimshot. Good evening, Rimshot. I'm new to this show. It is excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Rimshot. That's very nice of you. So,
Number one guest.
Yeah, you can come back. Can you explain again about, if you don't take the development fee, how this then becomes extra profit? Okay. So basically, if we're doing a development, we are going to be making profit. So let's just say we're going to be making £200,000 profit at the end when we sell the units. What's effectively happening is the commercial lender is agreeing to us taking some of that 200. So let's make the number up, 30,000. We're going to be taking 30,000 of that 200 profit a little early. So we'd be paying it £5,000 a month for 6 months. And so at the end of the day, the profit, because obviously that development management fee is a fee, so it's a cost to the program, goes into our pocket, which means that instead of 200 at the end, there's only 170. So that's why. So it's basically, we're, instead of waiting right to the end to get 200, we're taking 30 earlier on the drip every month, £5,000 a month during the construction phase, and then we get a slightly reduced amount, 170 at the end when we sell the units. Rimshot, I hope that is clear.
Do you think it's clear? I think it's clear.
Oh, it's clear. I thought.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not clear, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
Thank you.
I think Ian done a good job there.
Yeah, that's good.
Ras has got a question. Ras says, do you have to provide parking under permitted development rights schemes? It's a nice question, isn't it? Nice and simple. Not necessarily. There we go, Ras. Hopefully that's answered your question. I'm going to say it depends, but in theory, no. Okay. Well, I'm saying in theory, no. Look, so well, because it's not. There's not always straight answers on these things. So under permitted development rights, you don't have to provide car parking. You have to do a study on traffic and highways impact, which could be to do with car parking. It could be, okay? But largely it's not. And so if you're going to do a new build development, Raz, then you'll be in a position where you've got to comply with planning policy, and that will require so many parking spaces for, depending on your unit sizes, 1, 2 bed, 3 bed, etc. Okay, so you will, and of course if it's a block of flats, visitors parkers and so on. So you would then, under permitted development rights, is not part of the criteria unless it comes under a traffic and highways impact study. Now, the way you get over that or get round that is on the basis of this project doesn't need it. It's in the middle of the town. There's public transport, there's cycle routes. You know, we're providing cycle storage, which indeed you have to provide anyway. And if the local policy is very much around that and the facilities are there, then that's totally your justification. And there's no highways impact, traffic impact, transport impact of your scheme going into that location. The other thing sometimes you can do as well, should you need some cars and you want to park the cars in the street, you can justify that actually this commercial unit would have had a proportion of its 20 staff or whatever it was likely to be in that building that would have driven there. And of course, if they'd have driven there, they'd have probably parked. Well, one's assuming they would have parked in the streets and it was okay. And you can do parking studies to see how many parking spaces you have available at different times of day. So in theory, you shouldn't have to provide parking. What I would say there is that, do you need it? Do you need the parking to sell? So regardless of whether you have to provide it, you know, from a planning perspective, do you need it? And that's a question for your estate agent. If you need it to sell the unit, then you want to think about putting it in, even if the planners can't force you. There we go. Hopefully that's answered that one nice and adequately.
Fantastic. Well done. I reciprocate. I thought that was a fantastic.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. That's good.
Excellent. I've got one.
I feel better.
That's good. Good. I've got one here from Sean. Evening, Sean. Evening, team. I just listened to a rerun on YouTube of your show from the other week. Well, topical.
There's people doing that all the time.
And
they're not watching us live, are they, all the time? They're just watching reruns.
Well, we're not live, are we?
No, we're completely recorded. We're not even here.
And you talked about thinking of property as a business, not a property strategy. Could you expand on that a little more in terms of what does this mean? Okay. To be honest, there's lots. The word strategy gets bandied about quite a lot in property investment generally. So whether that's development, whether it's buy-to-let, and buy-to-let in particular, because you've got things like HMOs and service accommodation and students and social housing, and there's all sorts of so-called strategies. What the principle here is that whatever it is, it needs to be run as a business. So it's not. It is kind of a strategy, but the reality is that that's just almost a buzzword. What we're saying is that it's a niche within property, and you need to run it as a business. I think a lot of people, even when they just got a simple buy-to-let, that needs to be run as a business. There's some kind of fundamental business skills that you can apply. It's not difficult, and it's not generally a very complex or complicated business, but you need to run every enterprise that you do. Particularly in property, but generally any money-making enterprise, run it as a business, and you'll end up in a much safer place. So that's what we mean about the difference between a strategy and a business. There we go, Sean. Hope that answers your question.
I wonder what we meant by that.
Yeah, I just made that up.
That's very good. Cool. Gabriella has a question. Gabriella, good evening. Can you explain a little more about the changeover that we now have to comply with space standards? Is this now a requirement for all schemes? And does that mean we can't build 20 square meter studios for students, for example? Question mark. Came in April last year. Okay, so now national space standards are a requirement. Interestingly, though, there could be ways around it. And we were talking to some of our students this week in our developers club. We have a developers club. and we were chatting away, and there was a big discussion around getting away with not having to comply with national space standards. Legitimately, I'm not saying dodge it, but legitimately not having to comply with national space standards. That's quite interesting. Okay, now, but let's just park that for now. Just forget that. If you're a student of ours, that's something we will share with you in due course. As some of you were obviously with us on Tuesday this week at the club. Now, apart from that, going back to this, national space standards come in. So yes, you do have to comply with national space standards in all schemes that you do, be it permitted development or be it new build. Now, the thing is, national space standards are there as a guidance, what's got to be followed, but you can apply for something less. So if you want to apply, in your case here, Gabriella, for 20 square meter studios, you can do that. And you may or may not get permission. You know, there's 20 square meter studios, that's perfectly big enough for a studio room, no problems at all, as you say, for students, but it doesn't matter what they're for, but it's a planning application. So my point, I guess, is for you, Gabriella, if you're looking at a permitted development rights scheme, you have to comply with national space standards, which is a minimum of 37 square meters for a one-bedroom flat, okay, one person with a shower room. So you can't build a 20 square meter under permitted development rights. So that means you'd have to, even if you have permitted development rights, apply for planning to get your 20 square meter studio. So yes, you can do them. You can apply for a 15 square meter studio if you want. Then you've got to show, what they will want to see is, does the layout work? Is it a nice environment to live? 15, 20 square meter. I mean, a 15 square meter, I think Travelodge rooms as a hotel room, if you can picture those, there's about 12 square meters. Probably quite tight to live in, but probably, you know, workable for a studio, you know, for a student. 20 definite in my opinion. There we go. Hopefully that answered. Next question.
Fantastic. We've got a comment from Ursula here who says, I think it's rather nice having you both in the same room. So I think you might be on your own with that one, Ursula, but here we are, nonetheless.
Well, we'll take a vote on that in a minute, maybe.
I think we could just about do 45 minutes, couldn't we? We've got a question here from Gary. Hi, Gary. Is it easy to find property development deals? I've heard there aren't many deals around. Okay, it kind of rather depends what you mean by easy. No, it's not a case of just pop on Rightmove and grab a couple before you nip out this evening. There is a lot of work that you need to do to find them. You need to know where to look, and a lot of them are not hiding in plain sight. A lot of them you need to work out. A lot of them don't actually come onto the market. So whilst you're sitting on Rightmove, there are deals being done by agents that are happening behind the scenes between agents and developers that never make it onto to Rightmove. So you need to work out how to tap into that market. There's also a lot of opportunity in going direct to vendors. So being able to, because as a developer, typically when you're converting properties, you're able to command a premium because you're creating value. That means that you're often able to pay more for a property than it's worth in its current state. So if somebody's owns a commercial building, if you can pay more than it's worth as a commercial building, there's a conversation to be had there. So being able to approach people that own buildings and have a dialogue, there's a whole raft of things that you can do in terms of being able to tap into that market, but you need to know what they are. I think the other thing is about sweating the asset. So big part of what we train people is it's not just about let's put some flats in this building. It's about, well, how can you maximize the space? How can you get the maximum number of units and make the best use of the space? Because if you can do that, not only can you pay more, so which means that you're likely to be the successful bidder, but also potentially you can make more money as well. So it's understanding those tips and tricks that enable you to get more out of the asset. So there you go. A few thoughts there, Gary. I hope that helps. Richie.
Look, it's gone quarter two. Let me make this the last question. Okay. Philip says, how many different types of insurance do you need, both for the business and the SPV on site? Okay, largely one policy should cover everything, Philip. And what I would say, reach out to an insurance broker. They'll guide you through this, okay? And make sure they're a property insurance broker. There are ones that specialize in property development policies. So you're going to have a public liability always, because, you know, if someone has a trip up or failure or whatever, or if you've got an office and they're going to come and meet you, so you'll need insurance for that. But in terms of the project, largely you're insuring the project should it burn down or collapse or fail or whatever. So you're ensuring that the site, the rebuild value, and assurance broker will guide you through that, make sure you've got the right level of cover and the right cover. That's massively important. There is also then a point, Philip, when actually the contractor takes the liability. So when the contractor's running the site for the duration of the conversion, or if it's a new build, they then have to insure. So you've got to make sure those insurance policies are covered off, okay, that they actually tie up with each other. So make sure you've got a good broker that can see you through that. Your project manager, as part of putting the contracts together, will ask for the contractor's insurance, and you've got to make sure that has got adequate cover, okay? So that's all in place. The other thing then, in terms of it, which I could say is insurances, you might think about warranties, and that you're probably not what you were thinking, but I'm going to throw that in just in case, Philip. Your sort of structural warranties like NHBC. There's loads of other companies out there, so those are like insurance policies that you need to get in place to actually sell it out. So there are construction policies for the project that you'll need. Even if you've got a group holding company as well, be careful, you might need to have insurance to cover off that. And of course, if you have, and a lot of developers they go out on their own, they don't even think to insure their laptops and computers and things like that. So, and it's peanuts cost. Make sure those things are covered. And particularly if you've got cameras and electronic measurers and stuff that you take out on site, are they covered for site use? But you can normally wrap all that up in one policy. Speak to insurance broker and they should help you.
And we did actually, Philip, have a podcast episode on insurance. So if you have a look on our website, have a rummage around, series 4, episode 10 from memory. You can,
do you remember that?
I do remember that. It was one of my favorites. Have a look at that. There was quite a lot of stuff there where we interviewed an insurance, a property broker specialist. So a few bits of information there for you.
Good stuff. Oh, folks, look, that's it. That is the end of the show. We're on an outside broadcast here at the NEC in Birmingham. And of course, the Home Burning Show is on till Sunday. If you want to come up, and I mean, you don't have to come and see us, but lots of interesting stuff. Come and have a look around. Please pop in the chat box anything that you want to say. If you've liked the show, if you haven't liked the show, if you'd like to see more of us together, can't guarantee that, but if you'd like us to be in the same studio, if you prefer the interaction that we have, then put it in the chat box, let us know, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Next week's show is, what time is it next week? It's going to be 7 o'clock next week, Thursday the 31st, and we have got a project manager on. Friend of the show, Dan Stiles, regularly comes on, gives us an update what's going on in his world, but more importantly, we can talk about, and you can ask questions about project management, cost consultancy, what's happening with costs at the moment, and cost of materials. All of that is very topical. Dan's going to be on the show. He can answer your questions about project management and cost consultancy. So please, 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 come and have a look. Come onto the show next week and see what he's got to say. Anyone else, if you're very interested to learn a bit more on property, if you're completely new to property, we often run some completely free webinars. Okay, some training sessions. propertyceo.co.uk. /SFR. If you'd like to do that, then go on to there and you can come and spend, I think about 3 or so hours with myself and Ian, completely free.
What's not to like?
What's not to like about that? Okay, good stuff. So we'll see you next week. Who says what in the chat box? Phil says, great chap. See you tomorrow. Oh, Phil's going to come and see us. Great stuff. Dan says, great show as always, guys. Thanks very much. Double thumbs up. Charlotte says, terrific evening. Nice to see you together. Oh, that is sweet. Giovanni says, great show, thumbs up. Gabriella says, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for answering my questions. Gabriella, no problem at all. Rachel said, thoroughly enjoyed the show. What a great evening. Nice to see you on an outside broadcast, says Paul. Not sure why it's not, and it's just a backdrop. That's all that's different, Paul. And Stephen says, terrific show. See you next week, Stephen. See you next week. See you all. Have a great weekend. Goodbye now. Bye-bye.